For those of you I haven't met yet, my name is Michael Lindo. I'm the curator, co-curator with Lonnie at the Bullseye Gallery, and it really is my privilege to introduce Beverly Fishman today. There are only a few people that I count as mentors in my life, and Beverly is one of them, and the other one preceded me on stage here. Beverly Fishman, the first time I ever spoke to her, she convinced me to move from my comfortable house here in Portland to Detroit, which is a testament to how persuasive she is. She is the artist in residence at Cranbrook Academy of Art, where she heads the painting department. She's won numerous awards over the years, including the Louis Comfort Tiffany Award, and in 2009, a Guggenheim Fellowship. In 2010, she was awarded the Toledo Museum of Art's Artist Pavilion Grant, which was her first foray into glass and where she fell in love with the material. So I'd like you all to welcome Beverly Fishman.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. I am so nervous. I feel like a child going to class for the first time where you don't know anybody. A lot of times when I give a, quote, art lecture, I know more people in the audience, but I feel like this is a very special occasion for me. And I want to thank Michael and the entire Bullseye team for having me. I also want to thank my mother and father, Shirley and Irv, who are up floating around somewhere, who told me to do what I love, and money would follow. And there was a point in time in my career where I was so poor, my father got on the phone, and after about 10 years, he said, I just don't know. He was concerned. He was concerned. And I said, but you told me to do what I loved. And I was fortunate enough for both my parents to be alive, to see that I ended up okay. And so, especially to my mother, Shirley, who I adored. This is for her. I am going back into the 90s, okay? So we have a long way to go. I will speak quickly. I'm from the East Coast. I'm sorry. I will zoom through. I have way too many slides, but I want to talk about process. I want to talk about concept. I want to talk about color. I want to talk about like a lot of things. So it's going to be a real mix of stories and all kinds of stuff thrown at you. This piece is called Hazel Eyes. I was told as a young kid I didn't have blue eyes, which are in this culture the most beautiful. I didn't have green eyes. But I had hazel instead of brown, because my work has dealt with identity and issues of identity for a very long time. The idea that the molecules were made into kind of a celestial landscape, and calling this hazel eyes is kind of the range of color that might be considered hazel. So this is made with hundreds and hundreds of pieces of a tabletop Xerox machine, black and white, back in the day. And it deals with the handmade and the reproduction, or the reproductive technology. I mimicked that technology. I thought technology actually was a woman, okay? Unlike this split between technology being male and nature being female, I thought the Xerox machine was perfect. I mean, my God, it reproduced. It did all the things that I did. And so you can imagine this cheap equipment, which gave black and white 8.5 by 11-inch paper. This piece is over 7 feet tall. This is hundreds of pieces glued together and me hand painting. These are other pieces called The Poetics of Disease, and the other piece is Untitled. I was very much interested in asking the question, who am I? But I wasn't interested in how I looked. I was interested in everything underneath the skin that kind of made us all universally to, have this common bond, but also through just a minute shift in a cell could create cataclysmic difference. So if you looked at my sisters and my one brother, you'd say I'm the black sheep, and in many, many ways. And I have some things in common and very little in common. But the difference between my hair being now artificially red, at one time naturally red, and let's say my younger sister has almost black brown hair, was a minute shift. And I was interested in how we could take the cellular level and speak so much about the condition of mankind. So my work has dealt with imagery in terms of the body and how science imaged our body and how much science fractured our body, meaning the cell was a potent image to talk about the condition. So these pieces were done at the time of AIDS. And if you had AIDS, you had that disease, meaning you lost your identity as an overall person. Being a woman and dealing with the issues of being my gender, being a woman versus being a male, you can see how that the cell itself could be an important place to talk about the condition, the way we live. I got to Cranbrook and I negotiated Cranbrook to have a color Xerox machine. And it was about the end of July, and I would not sign my contract until they bought the color Xerox machine. And it was about a $23,000 investment. And I held out to the point that they really didn't have anybody else to come. And I was told, to negotiate hard. And so I got the color Xerox machine, and it paid for itself a million times over. But I liked the color Xerox machine and the hands-on experience of it because I knew it could create color and saturation that when you went down the street to a Kinko's, they told you it couldn't happen. And the reason why it couldn't happen is because the amount of pigment that I was using to get a single image was way more and was not cost effective. And one side of this large piece is actually almost all hand painted, and the other side is all mechanically made. And so I was looking to bridge technology and the handmade. Where did technology end and the handmade began? And I was looking to fuse the mechanical and the handmade, and also think about something being able to be a multiple and be an exact multiple, but through making, it always being individual. And that has continued my practice for over 20 years. And the shape has to do with the locket, the way that we could carry a very intimate piece of a loved one, an image of a lock of hair or something like that, so that the shape was conceptually chosen. And this is 8 by 8 feet. And it had to do with taking a cell, something minute, something that we normally don't see without using technology, and blowing it up. So it's this idea of seeing something, as almost like macro instead of micro. This led to a piece, I was given an opportunity at the Detroit Institute of Arts to intervene in the collection. And the Great Hall at the time had a large assortment of these incredible armor suits. What I was interested in was having a conversation between an old notion that we could actually protect ourselves through armor, and in fact the skin being permeable, and that our understanding of science was much more advanced, and that the skin was permeable, and so that this amount of armor would not really protect us. And so it's an old idea of thinking about the body in a newer way. The circle for me represented the telescope, the eye, the way in which we saw these images. So we only saw them through a kind of circular lens. There's also a reference to macro. So there was a lot of micro-macro at the time, and mining the connection between something minute and small and interior to something sort of outer space. Up. At the same time, so I work on many series at the same time, and they all feed each other and they all talk to each other. So it's rare that I will be working only on painting, meaning there's normally 3 or 4 tracks I'm working on, and some things take 5 years to evolve. Some things take 10 years to evolve. Nothing takes 10 minutes. Incredibly tedious work normally that I do. This is called the ID series, and it was a series that looked at the morphologic structure of cells, which are the shapes of the cells without its use. And every day I did one, so it became my one-a-day practice. And a lot of times there's a practice that I'm doing in the studio, and some of you, I'm sure, can relate to this, which has this kind of immediacy that allows you to be very spontaneous, where you don't have to think about your vision, long term. And so sometimes these are look up and pop, sometimes they're more mysterious and dark. Each one had a cutout nucleus. These are made of wood. All this work before is made out of wood with a lot of collage. And on top of these was a kind of liquid resin coating. And again, that liquid resin for me thought about the lens or the eye, that kind of glossy look, the way in which we saw these. So for me, materiality and color and form come out of a conceptual mind, meaning it's rare for me to say, I picked that color because I liked it. I made that shape because I liked it. I mean, a lot of work I do, I honestly don't like the practice or making of it, and I know I'm fairly rare with this. But if I think the form needs to change, or I think the material needs to change because conceptually the work is driving it, I will do it. Sometimes kicking and screaming, it doesn't matter, I'm gonna do it. At the same time I'm making this one a day, I'm doing these installation paintings. There were about 180 elements. They are taken from photographs of conglomerates of cells. And if you've ever studied cells or medicine, you know that it's very hard to find books on healthy cells. What you find in medicine and science is the first image is healthy, and then the entire book is dedicated to disease. And that's our culture. And I think it's very Western, and it's kind of shocking. But in my own way, I thought by me using the Xerox machine and rejiggering them, I could change them from illness to health. Right? Because it was so minute, that shift that created those changes. Just by placing them on the Xerox machine, I knew I could change it. And so this piece on the left is called Whack, and the other piece is called Ghost. And Ghost is specifically about everything that we can't see that's underneath the skin that's happening. A lot of us don't like to think about that at all. I think from my own personal history, when people say to me, why did you track science, medicine, and all this stuff? And it's because it was personal. It's been personally important to my work, to my being. That's why I track it. And I also think that I have an interest in this question of identity and how we are told what will heal us. And all the kind of things that are not black and white in the world. So these pieces look like they were kind of splattered onto the wall, but in fact there are large templates made, and they're all numbered and they are exact. And the color in between that you're seeing vibrate on the white wall is fluorescence. And so I'm activating the white wall by using a kind of color system that is industrial fluorescent color, that is so electric and so bright that it activates all the space between. And if you've ever looked at photographs of cells, you see that they kind of look like this. In fact, a lot of them are taken from exactly this. And then by activating the wall, I'm interested in making that color so like almost ghost-like or vaporous. And I'm interested in this feeling that like right before your eyes, they could change and mutate and move. And so these scatter works are about 180 to 200 elements, and some of them range from anywhere from a ½ inch big to 6 inches big. This is one of the last pieces that I'm going to show of this scatter group, and this piece was called Fever. And everything that I'm showing you, every body of work where it shifts and changes, there's probably 3 or 4 dozen. So I'm giving you the short synopsis of massive bodies of work. And this piece is called Fever, and at this time I'm thinking so much about how color and the kind of opticality of pattern and color can and did create a physical response in my body. So when you got in front of Fever, you were nauseous. Okay, you were destabilized. And so I have been looking for color that is so saturated or so vibrant or so discombobulating that it makes a physical response. And so color for me is usually sensorial, meaning it crosses over more than one sensation. So I don't think about color, everyone thinks about color in different ways. I think about color, I can taste lemon. I have that ability to feel a taste come to my mouth with certain color. And I also know when a piece is done, when it physically knocks me out. Now, is this good for people in their homes, and is it nice? No. But what I'm saying here isn't about very nice things. And I'm not really interested in nice. I'm interested in kind of making this statement be as powerful as I can make it. And so this piece is basically mainly red greens. The sides of it are an intense red fluorescence. So everywhere there's sort of an opening in the space, it glows red. And so there's something about it being solid on the one hand and have a glow at the same time. And can color do that? Yes. But it's the materiality of color I'm interested in. What material will give me that sensation, as well as what color will give me that sensation? I changed at this time from disease to the cure. And the cure in this culture is an incredible disease. So you just have to pick up the newspaper and look around and go to a coffee, go to a kind of cocktail party. In 1999, I changed the work radically in the sense of I changed the material. I went from the color Xerox and the wood into resin. This piece has 192 elements. These were all made first by sculpting them out of wood. They're very handmade. They could have been made machine-made. They were not machine-made. They were made handmade, and then molds were made. And there could have been millions of them, but these are all hand-cast, so that if you were to hold each one in your hand, you would see them as an individual piece, meaning you're not going to see two that look like each other. The other thing about the cure, which was interesting for me, it was about the time that Prozac Nation came out and cocktail conversations amongst women. Men normally don't talk about the drugs they're taking, but women are great about that. Women will say, went to the doctor. I mean, my mother was fabulous with this in the sort of the late 50s, early 60s. All her girlfriends were taking Valium. Why? Because, they had kids and they were stressed and it was like candy. Nobody knew it was addictive. Here, take a pill. It started way back. The Valley of the Dolls was my mother. My mother wasn't an addict, I just want to say, because she'd come down and swoop and hit me on the head. She wasn't an addict, but I was well aware when she had Card Club that they were having these kind of conversations about what the doctor gave. Well, what was wrong? Well, you have kids, you've got to take them everywhere. It's stressful to be in the suburbs. Well, in the 90s, what shocked me was I was out with a girlfriend who was like a fanatic, a health fanatic, and I said I had a headache. She took out her handbag this assortment of pills, and she said, look, I have Advil and I have Vicodin. I have everything in between. Do you want a vitamin? Do you want a Vicodin? What do you want? And I said, oh my God, and I named a piece The Arsenal, because I realized our identities are what we take. Our identities are based on what we wear, on what we like, on what we buy, on what we ingest. Our identities are made up of all the sum parts. And so for me, medicine and who we are is as American as apple pie. And I found it was cool if you went to a party, you could talk about you were a little depressed, so you take a Prozac. But this didn't mean psychosis, okay? This meant a little depressed. You had to go to a certain point, and then there was a point of no return that became not cocktail conversation. So this is my ode to Prozac, and the piece is called Feel Good. But I didn't like the shape, and this was made out of resin. So in 1999, I made this piece, and it was cast of resin, and I wanted it to look like gumdrops, and I wanted it to look like candy. The pharmaceutical industry wants them to look like candy, wants you to take them, and wants to brand them so that you'll stay branded. I am a Prada girl. Not today, not head to toe. I am a Levi's girl. I'm a this girl. I only wear this. I only drive this. Well, the pharmaceutical industry is all about that. This was my first foray into a new kind of color, which were phosphorescence. So phosphorescence, glow in the dark. This piece is called Sweet Dreams Lullaby. As I became more successful, I couldn't sleep well. And I realized, wow, as you get more successful, you have more anxiety because you have to keep up with success, right? You have a longer way to fall. And, if people don't like you, it's different than when nobody knew you. When nobody knew you, it was great. When people now know you and they don't like you, it's horrible. So I realized I get a lot of, my interest is not from me necessarily personally, but what's what people are talking about, what's in the culture. And the piece all these objects were made, and then the piece glowed for 15 minutes. And it was sited in a bedroom like a sweet dream lullaby. And then it would fade, and then natural light would juice up the pigmentation. So this isn't black light, okay? This is a phosphorescent pigment that can use any kind of light. And then the room goes dark, and these would glow. And they did not put me to sleep. I was invited in Los Angeles to do a piece, and I decided to do what I called the drugstore. And these are antacids to antipsychotics. I believed I had what you needed. These are all 9.5 inches by 11. Again, first carved out of wood. There's a lot of craft for me that has always been embedded in the work. These are then cast. No two were ever cast alike. Every single one of these pills were out on the market. Some of you recognize some of them, some of you don't. The guy that looks like a logo up there, the 3-person guy, is a drug for migraines. The bottom right diamond is Viagra. Nobody would admit they knew what Viagra was in 1999. I started back with these pills 7-8 years later. Everybody wanted to know where the Viagra was. So what is considered taboo in our culture to really speak about, over years becomes not a taboo. This piece was done in a huge industrial elevator. There were huge fluorescent lights because the glowing light of a Rite Aid makes me happy. And you could go up and down in this elevator and ride it, and the person viewing it could shut the light on and off. So they could stop at any point and look and then put the light back on and ride back and forth. And I love the idea of the ride because I think there's something about that. And so the color, on the one hand, looks like solid candy color, But then on the right, there's a vaporous glow, which kind of says, like, look what's underneath this. You know, you don't understand what the surface is different from the interior. At that time in 2000, my mom passed away. I decided to abruptly stop the resin work. It was just something that happens sometimes, you know, and some of you will say, you know, there was a life-altering decision or something happened in your life and you change. I decided to go with vinyl, collaged vinyl. Vinyl is amazing. It's signage, it's logo, it's graphic design. And I'm always trying, you know, the pills themselves were so much about identity and graphic design and logos. I went towards to speak about painting, but using vinyl. And I was amazed that there were hundreds and hundreds of colors of vinyl. So that the vinyl sign you might see, there were 15 shades of what could be considered flesh. And I started working with a graphic designer. And I started powder coating aluminum, and that each of these pieces were on top of each other, but had an inch in between. And I wanted to deal with this idea of simultaneity. So you get one message at one speed on one of these panels, and at another time you get another message. What you see here are EKG patterns, which are the heart, stretched pharmaceuticals, and up in that white space are like hidden information. So things that you need to see very close up, and things that read from very far away. I was also using the Gattaca, the code, the gene code. And I love the idea of, you know, this is 7 feet across. These are all vinyl. A lot of these are using vinyl that as you walk around it, they shift and change. So when I mine a material and I just feel like I'm hitting the surface of glass, you know, I mine it, meaning I'm on the phone, I'm talking to, I'm like trying to find out what can I get for what I want. These are 2 paintings that were in London at the Wellcome Trust. I had a large grouping of the pills that glowed, and they decided that they were going to cause a car accident. So, because, you know, so they kept them static. They could not glow because they were afraid it was a busy street. People would stop and start at the wrong time. Night Rainbow. This is vinyl as well, and I was looking to experience kind of the glow. So what you see here in terms of this color, brown as natural in vinyl. What could be more strange than natural color in such an artificial material? So I was interested again in that, and I had hundreds, if not thousands of pieces of vinyl all over my floors, cut, and then I would work intuitively, meaning nothing I have ever done has been worked out from beginning to end on the computer. Everything is done with me putting down a color and then responding to that color. To me, color is physical. I can't see it on the screen and decide what it's going to look like in vinyl. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I'm old school. You know, I had a meeting today with Tom, and I'm like, I got to see this thing. That's the only way I know, is when I experience it. I got involved in thinking about environmental and how the work could become environmental, and I started making wallpaper as installation. And this installation wallpaper is called Candyland. And that was my favorite game growing up, was Candyland. I don't know how many boxes of Candyland I had. I wore it out over and over again. And I thought that's the way the industry wants us to think, like candy, right? Just take the little purple pill. This is another piece. These paintings were cited for specific wallpaper. The molecular structures on this wallpaper are all different drugs. So on this wall, there are molecular structures from caffeine to much stronger. And that painting is cited specifically for that wallpaper. And I then, in 2007, went back to redoing some of the pharmaceuticals. The smile is an illegal drug, and the mousse is Prandon, which is for diabetes. This is called Vertigo, and it was a black and white wallpaper, and it was a series of paintings that I made for this wallpaper. The wainscoting at the bottom has DNA and code. These are now all enamel printed, hand printed on small screens and hand painted on powder coated aluminum. People say, how did you get there? It's like, well, I had a thought. Well, I don't know how to make it, so I start talking. I get on the phone. I'm like, can you show me this? What do you think of this? And I just start, and God knows where I've ended up. I've ended up with glass. This is another piece, and this is reflective wallpaper. At that time, the idea of the reflective and our body and our image completing the work really interests me. I've always been interested in bringing the work, out of the single object into the environment. And so I started working on polished stainless steel. The codes in this, the top are actually audio code, like it's audio waves. There's a helix, and then the bottom is 3D, a 3D digital image of skin. These are verticals, that's Bart. They found Bart on children's playgrounds, ecstasy in the shape of Bart, because they wanted your kids to take it. And they knew that Bart and Ninja Turtles were just like gummy vitamins. So this is a newer version of the work. And the glows changed from short glow to long glow. So I had to start over from the beginning and experiment with all the different companies and all the materials, because nothing worked the same. The resin didn't work the same, everything was new. And everybody says always new is improved, but sometimes it's just not true. So a lot of the pigments were not working, or they weren't compatible with the material. So that's ecstasy. Some of you want to say you don't know what ecstasy is, and that's okay. It's a drug that's being made in people's basements, and it makes you nice and high. It's illegal. And when you make illegal drugs, you do brand them using other people's icons, because you don't worry about any of the copyright because you're already illegal. Okay? So I'm likening the guys in the basement to Big Pharma. And I'm saying you are to absorb and just know that brand. And that brand is to become so connected to who you are that you won't change when it becomes generic. So that's kind of like the new color of the glow. Me, glow. Okay, they found Obama in an ecstasy. They found Obama at the same time, this image of Obama, they found that in an ecstasy pill, the same way they found Ninja Turtles and Bart. It took me a really long time to realize that Obama, as far as all my research goes, is the only president and only kind of star person that's ever been on an illegal drug. And that has to do with his level of cool. And someone asked me why I don't make a Sarah Palin. I said, if Sarah Palin was made as a drug, believe me, I'd be on it. But the people who are selling these to the people that are buying these think Obama's cool. I changed my paintings using atmospheric spray and acrylic. And as you look at the top of that, I was looking for the kind of glow to mimic those glow-in-the-dark pills. This is owned and up at the Toledo Museum. That's kind of the materiality of it. This is a whole Candyland series. And in that bar are EEGs, So they looked a lot like the EKGs, but EEGs are brainwaves. So basically, if you take all those drugs, your EEGs are going to look like that. This is a small grouping of work where I'm dealing with the actual computer, the way in which these, the motherboard. Okay, so I get the opportunity to work at Toledo. Oh my God. I was invited to give a lecture, and they honored me because my painting went up into the museum. And I walked through the incredible glass pavilion, and I turned to the curator and said, "Oh, I've always wanted to work in glass." And she turned to me, this is just how it happened. She said, "I think that might be able to be arranged." And 2 months later, the fairy godmother of all put a little star over my head and said, "You win this award." And the rest is kind of history, right? Because now I'm obsessed, and what am I going to do? It's a lot of money. So these glass pills, why I love the glass and I picked the capsule, is because the two-part capsule allowed me to make a lot of variation. And I thought this way, everybody could own their own cure, meaning no two would be alike. I thought this is incredible. I mean, I'm always looking for endless variety in all the work that I've done. And I could have made a million the same, but I didn't. And then the Santa building had these incredible glass walls that I used as like the building's intestines, where I poured all these pills into it. And they were on the floor. That's a great shot, from only this angle. And the scatter of these pills were within these arteries. I can't tell you how many people tried, banged their head, and were going to go in and take one or rearrange them. In my New York show, I was so affected by the glass and the paintings were being worked incredibly simultaneously. Pattern for the glass and pattern for the paintings became the synergy was there. And so, as you can see, and why I choose an image like this is you can see the reflectivity. And so your body, your image completes the code. The stripes are all barcodes taken from pills. This is a piece called One a Day, 7 of them. These are all 7 feet. And again, you're seeing a shadow, and that's a shadow of a person. And as you walk around them, they completely change. And this is a new version, another version of how pill spill was shown. And I am coming really close to, my God, I'm clicking away. I'm sorry, but what the hell? And I decided the big drug dealers and the big users needed really big pills, okay? So the small ones for the, us mortals. But Obama and a bunch of them were carved out of wood, hand-carved. And then they were chromed by the chromer who chromed the gold Victoria's Secret bra, okay? This is his claim to fame. And so he could chrome on materials other than metal. And I started this series in 2009. And these are all about 32 inches, 33 inches, but I'm going as big as 5 feet. And I've been working on this project for a very long time, mainly because I can't afford this project. And you can see yourself in this, and it's a different kind of reflective. And, I'm really interested in how abstract a lot of these look, but how much of a representation they are if you know what they are. So that they can read, like this square could easily read abstractly, as well as, the viewer being able to identify it. An experimentation of the glass on stainless steel, which is the way I'm going now. I'm looking at my red, I'm clicking. The Detroit Institute of Arts allowed me to put pill spill back. for 6 months. I want to get to this. Okay, here are my pillboxes that are new. Oh, what did I do? Damn. Okay, wait. Okay. So now I'm making these smaller groupings of pillboxes, and I'm silvering them as well. And I like the idea of the box being something that you can't get to. That there's a space between you, the viewer, and the object. And I think there's a level of seduction with that the viewer being myself, okay, which is who I'm really interested in, right? I mean, the viewer's me. Where I'm interested in this idea of wanting to reach in and touch, but I can't. And that makes it even more precious or more desirable. So some of the strategies that I'm using, I think, are about like how to mine that desire. And my last piece is Artificial Paradise, which I've now made tablets, which are solid glass. This piece is based on a very early book, which makes no sense to me, of pills being formatted through color. So there's a whole book on pink pills, blue pills, white pills. No interest at all in what they do. I thought this book was so shocking, because I have a huge collection of books, that I would sort of make it be like that, but not be obvious. So sort of my reds, yellow, oranges with the blues. This is an illegal drug called Molly, which is out on the market right now. It's crushed glass. If you sniffed that amount, you would die just the way that amount in real life would kill you. This is a studio shot of mine. This is a very neat studio shot, okay? This is one of the prettiest studio shots I have. It looks like a bomb went off, and there's 1 inch for anyone to move. So I'm working on these huge paintings, and I have like one little space to move. And I feel better when there's a little space. So I want to thank you so much, and I look forward in the future, because we have no time, for questions, thoughts, communication. Thank you.